Hello folks, today I wanted to bring you something a little bit different and a little bit special. It's an interview that I did for a podcast that's hosted by a professional tinnitus coach called Frieda. He's based in Berlin. He is someone who has got a lot of great information, great tips in terms of tinnitus, and he asked me to be a guest on his podcast. I wanted to share with you some of the highlights from that podcast. It's an hour long, but I wanted to share them in sort of highlight form. And the reason why is because I think it brings up a lot of good points on how to deal with tinnitus, the problems that arise with tinnitus, and also to give you some insights from a real professional tinnitus coach who has got a lot of good points to make. And I think the conversation in general was really, really good, and I wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to just quickly remind you before we get into the podcast that I've got a website called helpmytinnitus.com, where if you sign up, you get free tips and tools. I've also got 2 books available on Amazon. One is called Overcoming Tinnitus, where I discuss the general principles of what I feel were the fundamental points of how I overcame my tinnitus. And the second is called A Musician with Tinnitus, where I discuss how I remain a professional musician despite having chronic tinnitus. Both of these books are available to buy in paperback and Kindle version on Amazon. And if you'd like to download the first 2 chapters of each book for free, no strings attached, then check out the links in the description box below. I'll also have links to Frieda's podcast and also links to the books directly on Amazon. But for now, let's get into the podcast. I think you'll like this.
And I would like to get into your journey a bit. So how was the first experience when you said, like, okay, first you experienced tinnitus, and how did it take you from back then being able to hear it at night or in the evening when it was quiet to being now Jack Rubinacci? You've told me and you've shown that you have even published books on tinnitus already, and you help people and especially also musicians with tinnitus. So how does that come about?
So I was recording a song in my flat in Oslo. I'd moved to Oslo by now at 27, and it was just an acoustic song, wasn't very loud. But I felt like one of the frequencies on the guitar strings, the top string, the B string, it was bothering me. So I went to bed that night and I woke up exhausted. The next day I just couldn't move, and I'm quite an energetic person. So for 3 days, it's funny you mentioned 3 days earlier on, because that's what it was like for me. For 3 days I just couldn't move. I was like a zombie. And then I heard it. I heard a very faint noise in my ears, and I knew straight away what it was. There was no, I think my grandmother, I was very close to my grandmother growing up, and I think she might have mentioned tinnitus somewhere along the line. I knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't going to go away. I don't know why, I just knew it was there. The first thing I did was I think there's three phases to tinnitus actually, or at least there has been with my journey.
Yeah.
And I think the first few days were shock, worry, fear. I would go for a walk in the park. There's a beautiful park in Oslo called Vigelands Park that's got some beautiful statues. And I would just go and listen to the wind and let the wind go in my ears, because the wind would take away the noise. It was incredibly scary, but because I'm quite a strong personality and quite a stubborn person, I just carried on. I thought, I'm just going to carry on and deal with it. And I think that was my first
sorry
mistake.
to interrupt you. Carry on means I'll just continue doing what I do, or what is this?
Yeah. So carry on in the sense that because I'm stubborn, I just thought, well, it's there. It's like like a small stone in my shoe.
Yeah.
I'll just get used to it.
Okay.
And I think that was my very first mistake, is that if I could go back with the knowledge that I have now, what I would have done is I would have gone to the doctor, I would have got earplugs, I would have taken all the precautions that I take now, but because I'm stupid, I didn't do anything. I felt good about being, a busy musician. You feel a certain sense of pride.
Yeah, for sure.
Of being,
of course.
Out and about every weekend.
Yeah.
And I would play everywhere, and I would play loud because I liked it loud. Yeah. And then when I was about 36, I started to understand that my ears were getting worse and that it was becoming very scary. So I thought, okay, this is no joke anymore, because now it was becoming a problem. Now I'll be like, okay, I'm a bit worried about this.
Yeah.
So I went to see an ENT, ear, nose and throat doctor, and it was heartbreaking. It was, it made me want to cry,
Yeah.
literally,
The
because I was
usual,
going for a
the usual trip to the ENT. That is, yeah. Don't describe too much meaning to it. Don't worry about it too much, and just get on with
yeah,
your life, right? Like usually the
yeah,
usual. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm sat in the chair going, look,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a musician. I do this every weekend. I'm really
Yeah.
worried.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, just he couldn't give me any advice. And it's a desperate, lonely, upsetting
Yeah.
feeling, for everyone, not just the musician,
No,
but
for
for anyone.
everyone. For everyone.
So I didn't know what to do. But again, I just had to carry on, because this is
Yeah,
what I do. So
for sure.
what I did do is I started to invest in earplugs. But again, because I'm an idiot, I bought one pair of custom-made earplugs. Custom-made, the silicone ones
Yeah.
that they
Yeah. Yeah.
mold to your ear. They
I
put putty in your ear,
Yeah, I get
and
them as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean. So they mold those earplugs
Mhm.
exactly to your
Mhm. Mhm.
ear. I got one pair, and they're quite expensive. So they were I think they're about $150, to use dollars instead
Well,
of krona.
I just wanted
Um,
to just to hop in here very quickly.
yeah,
I mean, yes, you're right. They're not for free. They're not like the foam ones that you get on Amazon, the pack with 200 for $10. But one of the things to say is if you compare the amount of money you made through music and your shows and everything, and you compare it to custom molded earplugs that cost you $150, but they save your ears for the better time of the future, so you in future as well can continue making music. And like I know that people say like, oh, $80, $100 for custom made earplugs, that's quite some money, but if you realize that you have one pair of ears for the rest of your life, investing $150, so like 80 bucks per side, doesn't seem that bad in my opinion. So I just want to
no,
encourage all the people who listen, which I usually do on the show, to really consider if you already have tinnitus, if you have already trouble with your ears. And this is what you said earlier: if we can prevent people from acting this way and behaving in this way, we really want to encourage them. And for all the audiologists who are listening, if you want to do an advertisement on my podcast for custom-made earplugs, I would definitely consider that for this show, because I think that would be a very valuable advertisement to do.
yeah,
Otherwise, I don't want to have any ads on my show.
yeah. You know what? You know what? So this is what happened. So I bought one pair, and
Yeah.
I thought that was a lot of money. Well, for me it was,
Yeah, 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 for
$150.
sure.
Yeah. But do you know how many pairs I have now? I have four pairs. No, I have three pairs of custom molded earplugs. Two
Okay.
are minus 30 dB that are just the small ones that go
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
ear, but
yeah.
they're beautiful. They're really nice. I have those on me at all times. I have one pair in my. I just made a video about this the other day on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah,
How I carry them. I have one pair in my wallet.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have one pair on my mixing desk, which again are minus 30 dB. And then for doing gigs, I have another pair of molded earplugs that are called hunting earplugs. They're the earplugs they give for rifles, people that shoot rifles, because they're just a big lump of silicone that's molded to your ear, and they just pop it in, and it
And they
just
seal
it
everything.
sits beautifully in your ear, and it just covers your entire ear.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's three of those. I also have a pair of, I won't mention the name just because it will be free advertising, but another pair of professional earplugs that are minus 36 dB that are really nice, and they go on my car keys. And the reason why I have that situation, Frida, is because there's been times where I've got them in my wallet, but perhaps I go out without my wallet. I'm just popping out to I don't know, somewhere, and all of a sudden I got loud music, but I've got them on my car keys. Or if I don't have my car keys, I've got them in my wallet. So I've always got them
Okay.
on me. And also means that I've always absolutely got a pair at a show, because I drive to the shows. I've got my wallet at the shows, and I've got a third pair in my guitar bag.
Right.
That's how important earplugs are to me.
Yeah,
So what
yeah,
I say
yeah.
to what I say to musicians, following on from what you said, what I say to musicians is, you need to save up for two pairs, not one.
And I wanted to start with something that I found really, really striking, is because you said that, when it first started, you didn't ascribe the meaning to it in the way that you said you would carry on, which is, in a sense, if you look at it from a cognitive behavioral therapy or from an acceptance and commitment perspective, which I use to coach my clients in, altering the perception of tinnitus and changing the behavior around tinnitus, it's actually very useful. So it is very useful if you say like, okay, I'm going to get on with it, and I'm going to accept the way this is at the moment, and it's okay the way it is at the moment. But it seems like for you, it took a bit of a shot in the wrong direction, because you are a musician, and at that point you should have, and what would have been beneficial for you is to realize that you actually at one point, yes, from one perspective, it's good to carry on and continue doing the things that you do and that you love, because that's just how you are most likely to get on with your life without suffering too much from tinnitus. But on the other hand, you probably, and as you said yourself, if you could go back in time, you would be more proactive about it. And this is what we're trying to say to people, right? So don't let tinnitus stop you from living your life. And this is one of the biggest things that we want to advocate, and that we talked already also before we recorded this episode. On the other hand, though, please be proactive and use the advice that we just gave you to, for example. And I think that was a great piece of advice, to have 2 sets of earplugs in different places, so you can always make sure, even if you only have money for one pair of custom molded ones, right? If you forget them at home, have a pair of simple silicone or simple swimming silicone earplugs that are $5 or something in your car cabinet or in your wallet or where not, you know. So yeah, that's a great advice.
So I just want to say something there, Frida, because it's interesting, because you've made me think about this now. I think there's 3 stages to my sort of journey with tinnitus, and it's sort of interesting you picking up on that, because the first stage was just moving forward with it,
yeah,
but not being proactive. So those things shouldn't go together. They should go together, but not in that way. So the 3 stages I think that my journey has been on is the initial shock and the fear, like we said, just wondering what's going to happen. Then I moved on to stage 2. And stage 2 is the hardest part. Stage 2 is, I can't take much more of this. How much is this going to be? What do I do? There's no one I can talk to. Stage 2 for me would have been about 5 years ago. And I couldn't find I found one musician that I could talk to. 2, actually. 2 musicians. One was sort of about it. Another guy was a very well-known DJ who was amazing to me. He was so kind to me. He sent me his telephone number, and he's a really well-known DJ. And he said, look, if you need to talk, you can talk to me. He was the only person I could find on the internet that was being active about it at that time. This was 5 years ago. I felt alone, I felt desperate, and it gets really, really dark. It gets like you feel so helpless. Like, how can I do more shows? How can I carry on? How can I make an album? I don't know how I can do this. And I've dedicated my entire life to it. Then there is stage 3, which is where I feel I'm at now. And it's not like I've reached a plateau. It's not like I've reached some golden treasure island where everything's fine now. Every day is, I have to be proactive every day. And stage 3 for me is going back almost to stage 1, and that is accepting it. Accepting that this is my reality. This is the situation that I find myself in. There's not anything that can be done in terms of medical intervention right now. Yeah. I feel optimistic for the future. I feel that there are some very, very promising things on the horizon.
Yeah.
But I've got to the point now where I think to myself, I'm 45, I'm going to be 46 this year. I've got a number of years in front of me. It's not unlimited. It's a limited amount of time that I have left in my life. Instead of missing the things that I can't do, I'm starting to appreciate the things that I can do. So what that means is that I can't rehearse in a room with 4 guys for 3 hours a night anymore. That just doesn't exist. That's not on my menu at all. When I do gigs, I have to be very, very careful. When I mix, I have to keep volumes at a very low level. I mix around about 60, 65 dB, which if you talk to any music engineer, they'll be like, what? That's crazy. That's so low. But instead of missing the things that I can't do, I appreciate the things that I can do.
Yeah.
I'm 45 and I can still gig. I have to be careful, but I can still gig. I can still hear. I have very good hearing. Yeah. So I've learned to accept it. I've learned to appreciate the things that I've got rather than regret the things that I don't have. And that's why I feel really passionately about trying to share this information that I have my journey. I don't have any professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a
Yeah.
scientist I'm not qualified in any way to talk about this stuff. But what I'm qualified to talk about is my experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And reaching stage 3, this sort of pulling yourself out of stage 2, which is despair, darkness. It's like a tunnel, right? You know what I'm talking about. Getting to stage 3 is like, you know what? I'm here. I have mobility. God willing, I've got mobility. I'm generally, a healthy person. I live in a free society. What I choose to do for the remaining years of my life is my choice.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've got to be proactive. And I like the fact that you use that word proactive, because that's a word that I really love. I really love the idea of saying, you know what, I face this challenge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm going to face it. I'm going to turn this problem
Yeah.
into a challenge. And
Yeah.
this is one of the things I talk about. I've got 2 books. I've got one called Overcoming Tinnitus, which is a generalized sort of tips and tools for people in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what happened is that when I was writing that book, because I'm a musician, I kept wanting to give musician examples. And the book was full of musical examples. And when I sort of gave it to my girlfriend, she's like, "This is great, but you've got to edit out the music examples
Yeah,
because
yeah.
people that aren't musicians aren't going to be interested in it."
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I wrote a second book called A Musician with Tinnitus, specifically directed at musicians. And the first thing I say in that book, Musicians with Tinnitus, because it's such a sensitive subject for musicians to deal with, try and turn your problem into a challenge, because
Yeah.
that's the starting point. When you do that,
Yeah.
you change your mindset and
Yeah.
you say,
Yeah, for sure.
what problems do I face?
Yeah.
The problems that I face are mixing, recording, touring, traveling, sound checking. How can I analyze all these problems and turn them into challenges and find ways to deal with them? Because what you're saying to your brain, and this is the interesting thing, your brain is listening to what you say. So if you say to yourself, find me some solutions, turn this problem into a challenge, what you're saying to your brain is, find me some actual physical solutions to these problems. So your
Yeah.
brain gets busy
Yeah,
thinking,
for
right?
sure. For
So
sure.
I started thinking about, how can I sound check? How can I tour? So, but the most important thing is dragging yourself out of stage 2.
Yeah,
and going
of
into
the
stage
vicious
3.
cycle of suffering and the misery that comes with it, and the continuous focus on it, and you're actually describing it a problem, making your brain triggering your fight and flight instinct most of the time, if not all the time, and by that you get stuck in that vicious cycle which you can't really get out of. That's why I love the fact that you talk more about acceptance. And acceptance, as we also discussed in the talk before recording this episode, acceptance doesn't have to be anything positive, right? People always say to me like, "Oh, but you know what? You want me to accept my tinnitus the way it is, and it sounds like you want me to say that this is something positive." And I'm like, no, not at all. Like, acceptance is basically taking the wind out of the sails of your fear, panic, and anxiety. And acceptance doesn't mean that you're going to love this or that you have to meditate on it and that you'll be like, "Oh, welcome, friend." Acceptance is like, give me the courage and strength to accept the things that I cannot change, and the courage and strength to accept and change the things that I can control. And if you do transform your way of thinking around tinnitus in that, you will signal to your brain that tinnitus is not as dangerous as you thought, because our brains, and we also discussed this, got the last update 200,000 years ago. So our brains are based on fear and survival mechanisms. And as soon as you perceive something as a fear and panic thing, so as the tinnitus, you turn into it, you listen to it, you become, you're panicking and your emotions go high and everything. And your brain is like, "Oh, this thing is very dangerous to me." And as soon as you accept it and you allow this to be there, to allow your feelings and your thoughts and your perceptions of this to be there, you can free yourself from that. Because why? Your brain will think like, okay, I mean, this is unpleasant, but it appears to not be dangerous to me, therefore not triggering the fight or flight instinct anymore. So that's why I thought, that's why I wanted to take this quick detour over the term of acceptance, because I think it's just such a valuable place to be, and it's so interesting how to see and hear how you got from stage 1 to 3, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say something real quick there. I have over the last, I don't know, 12 months, I've discovered what the term philosophy or philosophizing,
Mm.
it's a hard word to say,
Yeah.
what it actually means.
Yeah.
To me, what it means being philosophical about something. In English, we say, oh, you've got to be philosophical about it. It means, I understand what that means now. And what that means to me is reimagining, rethinking the way you feel about something that you can't change. If you think
Mm.
about like going back 2000 years to the Greeks and all the rest of it, what they're
Philosophers.
actually doing is they're talking about subjects that they can't actually change.
Yeah.
You're going to die. There are elemental laws to the planet.
Yeah.
The sun rises, the sun goes down.
Yeah.
There are things that we cannot change because they are the fundamental laws
They are
of the
what you are.
universe, right?
Yeah.
So we philosophize, we get philosophical about it because we reimagine how we think about
Yeah.
those things. We create our own thoughts about them, right? So what that means in terms of my tinnitus is that I can't change my tinnitus, but what I can change is by being philosophical about it, is changing the way I feel about it, and also the idea of um, the idea of being accepting it. The way I've dealt with that is that I've tried to find ways that I can grow from it. And this is an interesting thing, and this is something else that I mentioned in the podcast I was on this week. I've had to change the way I write music. I've had to change the way I record songs. I've had to change the way I work. And you know what? It's actually made me a better songwriter, a better musician, a better singer. Because I can't, for example, when I write songs, I can't sit around with a guitar for 8 hours a day like I used to. I used to really struggle to write songs, even though I wrote songs that ended up on the radio and blah, blah, blah. I would really struggle. I'd be there for 8 hours. I can't do that anymore. Like the idea of I can't even use an acoustic guitar anymore. I use an electric guitar that's unplugged. But it's made me work with my limitations, and it's made my songwriting better.
Nice.
Because I work within my limitations.
So awesome.
Same with singing.
Yeah.
Before, like I say, I used to be very insecure when I was younger, and I used to turn the volume up really loud, and I just
Yeah.
Now I can't work like that. I have to work with very low volumes.
Yeah.
So what it means is that you go inside the song, because you have to focus, you have to concentrate more.
Awesome.
To listen to carefully to what the music is doing, and when you concentrate more,
Yeah.
you master the
Your
song
focus.
better.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, it's not about, it's like you say, Frida, the information you're sharing is excellent, because it's not about accepting it. It's not like, oh, this is great, No, it's about saying, I've got this. What can I do about it? You know what I mean? How can I be proactive? There's that word again, How can I be proactive about it?
Yeah. There's helpful things and there's unhelpful things for sure. And we've talked about this before recording the episode as well, of being in online forums, looking for cures and all these kind of things. They are, if you so wish to call it, part of the problem, not part of the solution. Because when you think which behavior that I adopt around tinnitus is actual helpful behavior and which is very unhelpful behavior, then looking as to how far this medication research has gone today, and looking at all the comments there, and I've seen horrible things. I've seen things like before the new neuromod from Linear came out, and people were like, okay, this is really promising. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna jump out my window. And things in comments like that. And I'm like, you're completely outsourcing the responsibility for your life and how you deal with things in your life. I mean, someone who loses their limb can also not say, you know what, if I don't get that prosthetic limb, I'm going to jump off the bridge. Or they
No.
can. I mean, we all have the choice. That's also being philosophical about life. Like, you have the choice. But there's so much beauty in life if you're able to change your perspective on things that really bother you, and you can go to what is part of the solution. Part of the solution is not to circle around the problem solving anymore, because if you try to problem solve, also if you don't mistake acceptance again for loving or enjoying it, because this will only continue to be part of the problem. If you force yourself to be like, oh, I accept accept this tinnitus. It's totally okay. I'm fine from now on. That's also not part of the solution, because this is still the problem. Because you try to disguise it and tell your mind won't accept that. Your mind will be like, aha, okay, you're trying to trick me into something here. And that won't work. The only thing that will work is real acceptance, and with real acceptance I mean to also be willing to face the unpleasantness. So for example, if you are in a quiet space and it's like it's really unpleasant, you're like, oh fuck, this is really unpleasant today, let me see how this makes me feel, and let me see that I'm a strong enough person to be able to be with these feelings. And then afterwards have my brain realize, well, these feelings and these things are very unpleasant. They don't kill me, and they don't prevent me to going on with my life. So
I just want to say something real quick. I don't want to suggest in any way that getting to the stage that I'm in now, stage 3, is easy.
no,
It's not.
yeah,
And I don't want to suggest that like I said before, that like I've reached some sort of desert island where everything is golden, because for me, being proactive is an everyday thing. Living with me is not necessarily easy, because it's not, even though I've written books about the subject, I want to be very honest with the fact that it's an everyday thing. It's not a set it and forget it thing where, they say in music, when you get a tool, you just set it and forget it, It's not like that. It's not easy I don't want anyone thinking that I'm suggesting that it's easy to get to stage 3, because I struggled immensely to get to that point. And it's not something that, it's not a button you press. For me, every day I have to get up. And that's why I feel it's so important to have a set of tools. And that's what I've written about, so that I can keep reminding myself how to go forward, because it's not an easy thing to, like, it's like on my YouTube videos, I get people ask me, have you habituated? And what I always say to them is yes, but then I've lost it, and then it's come back again, because I know that the hardest point is when you habituate and then you lose it. Then you just feel hopeless, right? So I don't want to suggest that it's easy. It's not easy, but you can do it. If you every day remind yourself of the tools that you've got, the things to be grateful of. And in terms of habituation, yes, it's beautiful. When you habituate, you can habituate for long periods of time. And I've gone for a long time, not being burdened by it, but then you're going to lose it. And I think it's really important to share with people the idea that you will lose habituation. It's part of the journey. And that's when it's important to be strong and to feel the love of life, the love of, the love in your heart of your family. It's really important to feel that and find love wherever you find it, because that will bring you back to habituation. Because I feel that this word is a buzzword. This word habituation is a buzzword. Have you found it? Have you got it?
I know.
Yes, but it's like water in your hand. It's going to come and it's going to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Very, very nice. I myself, I don't like the word habituation so much. I'm not a big fan. I can honestly say, I'm lucky enough that my tinnitus hasn't gotten worse than what it already is the last 5 years. So I'm deaf on one ear, and I have a tinnitus and a hearing aid on my right ear. So I can pretty much always hear it, also outside on the road and pretty much everywhere. But luckily it hasn't gotten worse. So I always say to them, like, it's also not important who you compare yourself against to. There's people like, I hear two different sounds. Certainly that's worse than yours. And that's the negotiating stage, when people still negotiate and they see like, is maybe my tinnitus is maybe worse. Maybe my tinnitus is not as bad as yours. And this is sort of the negotiating stage where people negotiate what their tinnitus is and what it isn't. And what I have to say, and what I recommend to people is like, this is not useful, and the term habituation is also not useful. I am lucky enough to say that for the past 5 years, I think that I have gotten to a stage where I 95 to 98% do not care about my tinnitus. But it would be completely wrong to say, and I'm a tinnitus coach, I'm a human being, that I don't have moments that sometimes I have a night of bad sleep and then the tinnitus feels extra loud the next day. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Today is not that great. But I know how, exactly what you say, how to find my way back into in brackets, habituation, because it doesn't really count like habituation, but it's at least escaping the problem cycle. Because I know if I have a bad day of tinnitus, me being like, okay, it's a really bad day, what should I do? Maybe it's worse in the future. It's not going to help you it's not going to help you with anything. But I just know, like, you know what, when the situations and circumstances are better, my tinnitus is probably also going to be a bit better. So in a couple of days, I won't be feeling so bad about it anymore. And this is what it is about. It's not about when people come to me and they say like, can you help me to get rid of my tinnitus? And I honestly say like, no, I can't. But I can help you get at least 50 to 70% more quality of life with what I do in changing your perception and how you deal with the problem. And that's what it is about,
Sorry to interrupt you.
Good. Go ahead.
This reminds me of something that we spoke about last week when we had this, interview before we did the podcast.
Yeah.
One of the things I write about, the steps in my mind go: change the way you think about it, change the way you feel, exercise, food, that sort of stuff. But one of the big things for me is distractions. And we spoke about this last week. I don't know if you remember. And you just reminded me, because I write about this in the book. This is the example I gave. When I was on holiday, we recently, I'm from Rome. I was born in Rome, and although I grew up in Birmingham, my father's in Rome. So we go to Rome, and for many years we went to Rome, and I love Rome. It's in my heart. I love it. But for a change, it's beautiful. But for a change, we went to Crete, and we tried it. We'd never been, and I absolutely loved it. I developed this beautiful love affair with Crete, and specifically Crete. I just love it. We've been there a couple of times now, and I want to go back. While I was there, and remember, I have really bad tinnitus, so it's not like it was when I was 27. Now it's really bad. So if it was a 4 back then, now it's probably more like, it's getting towards an 8.5 and 9 now. It's really bad, okay? Just to sort of give people a perspective. But while I was there, for the first 3 or 4 days, I noticed something. Well, actually, I didn't notice it. I forgot that I had tinnitus. So to me, that is a significant finding, because I'm busy. I'm wondering what restaurant I need to go to. I'm wondering what beach should we go to? Should we get a boat trip? Should we hire this or hire that? Should we hire some bicycles to go around the island? Blah, 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 blah. All these things that you make, especially when you've got a little daughter with you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
You make all these decisions because we weren't just sitting on the beach. We were being active and having fun. We were with friends. We had lots of friends with us. There was drinking, eating, all sorts of good stuff, all healthy, family sort of holiday stuff.
Awesome.
And you know what? For the first 3 or 4 days, I forgot that I got tinnitus. It was about 3 or 4 days in that I was like, oh, wow, So what that to me was a significant find, because it was actually one of the most important finds. Now, I try and fill my life with stuff that interests me, because I find that when you do stuff that interests you and that you like, you are happy. It's like being a kid. It's like when you're 2 years old or 3 years old, or even 4 or 5, you don't play with toys that you don't like. You've always got the favorite toy that you always play with, because that's the toy you like. Whereas when we get older, because of circumstances, work, responsibilities, paying bills, we have to work with tools that we don't necessarily like, or toys that we don't necessarily like, right? So my point is that as people that suffer from tinnitus, and in some cases severe tinnitus, which I would put myself in that category, I think it's really important to also try and restructure your life in a way that you're doing more things that you like. I know it's a sensitive subject. I know that people have got jobs, they've got mortgages, they've got responsibilities, but I think it's very important for people that suffer from tinnitus to say, you know what, I think I need to look at myself for a minute.
100%.
I need to do what's
100%.
right for me, because unfortunately, I'm in this situation.
It's very important, and this goes with what you said. This is actually connects the 2 points now. If you learn to live a bit more in the moment, doing the things that you like, taking the time for yourself, having positive experience, you will, and this is proven by neuroscientists, for example, also doing meditation. It doesn't have to be spiritually, it doesn't have to be religious, but sitting down, spending time with yourself and noticing the cinema that's going on in your head, that you're only basically living in your mind and with your thoughts and this kind of thing, and you stop living in the moment and enjoying things and being very attentive to the moment, then you can transform not only tinnitus suffering, but pretty much any other suffering as well. And you can rewire your brain. You can literally have a new the brain is very neuroplastic, so you can establish new neuronal pathways, and you can transform the way you think about things, and also tinnitus.
Amen, brother. Amen. That's beautiful. Yeah.